Hi, welcome to Urban Insights. I'm Jayashree Kuru. Today we're talking about underground utilities. A lot of technologies available, not widely enough used, and with climate change, city after city is going into crisis. Uh, there is more intense precipitation, there is more water that needs to move into the drainage channels, and somewhere there is a mismatch. And I have with me Dr. Sanjay Rana, under trenchless technologies and underground utilities. Dr. Rana, thank you so much for joining us. If you could very quickly talk about the landscape of trenchless technologies and underground utility management in India today.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. I'm a geophysicist by profession, although very close to a geologist, but geophysicist is something which deals with like doing ultrasound and X-ray of the subsurface to find out what lies beneath. It starts from oil and gas, mining, groundwater, including utilities. Now, when it comes to utilities, it is not only unique to India, but it has been realized that in most parts of the world, we do not have accurate data of location of the underground utilities. The data on the underground utilities position itself is not there in most of the countries. Okay, and it's a problem not very unique to India because it was realized in many countries, and that's where the entire concept of subsurface utility engineering took off, and it happened in US. Whereas we feel that, for example, in US everything is very systematic, all the utilities are very well known, etc. But engineers, when they were doing projects like even highways or any kind of construction projects, they realized that they were always in conflict. Their project footprint was always in conflict with the existing utilities, and they came up with the idea that it is very important that we find a particular process or a method to detect and map these underground utilities. Okay, so now obviously it has come to India also. Somewhere in 2001, I pioneered the application of subsurface utility engineering in India, which is a process of mapping and detecting the underground utilities. So that is the first step. Okay, because whatever project you are doing on the surface, it can be putting a flyover or a new construction. You are invariably in conflict with what is already existing there. So unless you know where these utilities are, you cannot plan your project. Okay, and if you plan with limited or no information, at the time of construction, you will be in conflict with these existing utilities. Okay, so that's the entire process of SUE, in which there are various stages, and advanced geophysical equipment are also used to map and detect these utilities. Now, once you have done that, now once you have detected these utilities, then comes the next part that sometimes you need rehabilitation of your utilities. Okay, for example, you have a sewer line, and over the years, sewer line has deteriorated. There might be some cracks in this. There can be infiltration or exfiltration depending on what is the kind of pressure you are having around it, and in both the cases you have issues, right? If it is infiltration, ultimately the STPs get a excess load because of infiltrated soil and things like this. If it is exfiltration, your sewage is going in the natural ground, mixing up with the groundwater, etc., so you have problem there. So then comes these days trenchless technologies, where without having to open these sewer lines, because in congested areas you really cannot dig and do any repairs. So without opening these sewer lines from manhole to manhole, you can practically rehabilitate the entire thing. So it's like putting a new pipe inside the old body. Okay, and the sewer becomes as good as new with again a lifespan of something like 30, 40, 50 years. So these are the application of trenchless technology which are coming in the rehabilitation of the pipelines.
Right. Dr. Rana, if you look at cities, existing cities, we see massive problems of waterlogging. We see massive problems of flooding. There is sewage leakages. Uh, City after city is going into a crisis. The thing is that the technologies are available. Why don't municipalities adopt these technologies?
No, that's a very good question because when we talk about maintenance, if you look at a machine maintenance routine, right, there is something called predictive maintenance, then there is a routine maintenance, proactive maintenance, and then there is a firefighting maintenance, right, reactive maintenance as we call it. We all must agree to the point that in most of the cases, our civic authorities are resorting to reactive maintenance. Okay, that when something has gone wrong, that's the time we look at how to fix it quickly, and that too in a quick fix solution. Fact is that once the sewer line has been laid and it has lived a particular life of maybe 20 years or 25 years or whatever, or if you feel that it might be subjected to some kind of distress, regular maintenance should become part of our culture, right? As of now, it is not there. So since there is no regular maintenance, ultimately we get fires and then we get into firefighting. All right. Technologies are very much available, and thankfully these technologies are not imported anymore. These technologies are in India, right? So they are cost effective also. So it's up to the civic authorities to actually wake up to the point that we need to maintain our infrastructure. Creating an infrastructure is one thing, and then maintaining the infrastructure should be the next part of it, which we are not doing right now. And it applies to all the infrastructure. It is not only about utilities. If you talk about like the we had recent this roof fall at Terminal 1. Okay, now it's not that infrastructure was bad or some bad contractor had made that, but the point is it all has to be maintained. It's just like human body. Like we go to regular medical checkups, we maintain ourselves. So similarly, infrastructure also needs regular maintenance, which right now is not happening. And it has to be actually this point has to be raised to the highest level. That awareness somewhere has to come, because in many of the interactions with the department, sometimes they say, look, we do not have enough funds, barely we are able to manage even firefighting. Where do we get the money for doing all this, right? So a system has to be created that money is allocated for regular maintenance, right? And not just reactive maintenance, periodic maintenance, proactive maintenance, and preventive maintenance.
Okay, Dr. Anna, let me come to the policy part of it. One is that we don't make allocations for periodic maintenance, for preventive maintenance. The other thing is that there is no policy that requires municipalities or asset owners to do this. But some time ago, there was a national digital twinning policy that was in the works, which hasn't still been notified or become a law. Will that help? And what do you think policy can do to help?
Uh, See, all as we say that everything like this flows from the top. Okay, so there has to be a policy which is very clearly defining how things have to take place at different departments and different municipalities and that level. Okay, only then allocation will take place, because right now most of the departments talk about not having any funds for doing that, right? So there has to be a sense of urgency right at the top level, that they have to formulate a policy for that. I'll just give you an example from a different world altogether, and that world is dams, right? So I've been working with dams for last 30 years almost. And whenever we were going to a dam owner, they were saying that, look, we do not have any money to maintain the dam and things like this. Okay. Government realized the fact that dams can be considered as tickling time bombs, and unless they are maintained properly, they can lead to severe consequences in the downstream in terms of loss of life also. Okay. Government started formulating a policy long time back. Actually, it took almost 15-20 years for that thing to become an act, and now they have come up with a Dam Safety Act in 2021, where they have made it very clear that every dam needs to be inspected, it needs to be maintained, how it is to be inspected and maintained, etc., etc. And they have fixed responsibility of the concerned officials, that if something happens, this person is the person responsible, and there is a penal provision for that also. Okay. Now, that basically brings to focus the point that we need to understand the urgency of a situation. Today, what is happening is, as you very correctly said, we have these water logging issues because our drains are choked. We are having this sewer line issues. We have the sewer water mixing with the drinking water pipeline, and ultimately sewer finding its way into our taps, right? We have all these issues, but the urgency to tackle these issues is still not there at the top level. So that policy is very important, as you very correct.
Where are we in policy? The DPIIT at one point of time had picked up this as something that needs to be done.
See, right now I am really not aware of any legislation or any act or any policy which makes it mandatory for any civic authority to create maps of their cities, to update the maps of their cities, and to take up any kind of rehabilitation of their assets. Okay, we very well know that we live in Delhi. We know Delhi Jal Board, which is maintaining water sewage network, and even they are doing things only on the basis as and when needed, as we say, reactive maintenance. There is I am not aware of at least of any policy which mandates proactive maintenance or preventive maintenance.
So let me take the example of a large public hospital in Delhi, which recently went into a crisis because there was a water. Quality of water had got spoiled. Let me give you the example in greater detail. The thing is that it's in an area which was very congested. It is an These are old pipelines that, which hadn't been maintained. The number of people using it had changed. There was a plant stoppage which created a vacuum. It pulled in the sewage and the water from the road and so on, and the pipes have subsequently been rehabilitated. Now there is, I think, there is water that goes into a tank, and there is some treatment happening there at that point. But really, the problem, as I see it, is that unless you work to its capacity, you work the pipelines to its capacity. When it exceeds capacity, or when there is a crisis, if you haven't maintained it, then you have a problem of external water infiltrating, or that water coming out. This is a problem that has been repeated often enough.
It's a very typical problem. Like, it is very sensitive in their case because they run a hospital there, and water quality becomes very important. But that's exactly what I was discussing when we started our discussion, right? That it is very common for the sewage water to come in our taps. Why? Because pipes are not in good condition, neither the sewage pipe nor the water pipe, right? So sewage pipe is, let's say, having an exfiltration, that is, sewage is migrating in the soil. Just little distance from there is our water pipe. We are not having a 24 by 7 water supply. So when the water pipe is pressurized, that is the time there is no problem. No infiltration can take place. When the pipe is not under pressure, that is, there is no water in there, then it will obviously take things from outside, right? So that kind of infiltration will take place. Now that is a reason why it is so critical to maintain our pipes in good condition. That's number one. Number two, Dr. Kirti was talking about that we didn't know where the pipes are, and we had to do the digging. That actually could have been avoided because, as I told you in the beginning, that there are methods and procedures now by which, without digging, you can actually find out where the pipeline is. And even to rehabilitate the pipeline or to correct the pipeline for these kind of problems, you have trenchless methods. So in congested area especially, you really do not need to do any digging because that makes life miserable for the residents and everyone. The disruption cost is just too high. Okay, so that is something which can be avoided in any such project. If you have a problem, map the utilities using the geophysical methods in the process of SUE, subsurface utility engineering, and then carry out the rehabilitation using trenchless rehabilitation. So you don't need to really. Yeah.
Here, I'd like to tell you that, as I understood from a previous conversation with Dr. Kirti, they did try to figure out. You see, it is a government hospital, and funds have to be allocated. There is nothing in the fund allocation process which mandates, mapping of subsurface utilities. Digging is something that they can allocate resources to, but uh, um, to map the resources, there is no allocation. Do you agree with this? And if so, where does this have to change? In the PWD statements, in the CPWD documents, where does one have to get these listed?
Okay. Ultimately, you should state your objective. Your objective is to find out where the buried utilities are, right? And then you should do it with the right approach. And the right approach is technology-based approach, which obviously needs approach of subsurface utility engineering to find out where the utilities are. Now, in congested areas, if you go about digging, first of all, you can't do your job thoroughly because you can't dig everywhere. You only dig at certain places and then decide, okay, this might be the alignment and things like this. So that doesn't give you the total result. It turns out to be much more expensive, and if you add social cost to it, it is extremely expensive. Okay, but how departments deal with these problems, I leave it to them. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, what I will always say is that be it a hospital, be it a industry, be it a refinery, be it a factory, okay, if they really want long-term solution, they should have very good drawings and data of underground utilities within their premises and nearby where the water is coming from, where the sewage is going, etc., etc. Then only they can deal with these problems effectively. Otherwise, it will be firefighting all the way, all the time.
Okay. Dr. Rana, I'm going to take it to a different level. Today, with climate induced rainfall, the peak load factor has gone up many times over. You don't get regular rains, you get peak rains for maybe 48 hours. In 48 hours, you get a week's rainfall, and that the systems cannot cope. What can be done to our existing lived in cities using technologies that are available today, so that you can, do you need to retrofit, do you need to enhance, what do you need to do to cope with this?
See, right now what they have done is they have they are practically where they were. Only thing is that particular situation where the vacuum was created because of no supply is not there, so it's all good, right? But again, when the pressure inside the water pipelines drop, they will again have the same problem, right? So this is not a solution as of now. Okay, they have just wriggled out of the problem for some time. So what they need to do is, of course, mapping of their utilities is step number one. They must do it, and then rehabilitation of these pipe. Once it is established that the pipes are having some problem, that is, unless their cracks are there, no water will come inside, right? Now, if the water has come inside during the vacuum phase, then there is some problem with the pipes. So they must immediately go for rehabilitation of these pipes, which can be done using trenchless methods. You don't need to open the pipe. The population will not be disturbed. Both the sewage pipe and the water pipe, they must go for rehabilitation of that. That should be the way forward.
Vis-a-vis digging, how much more expensive is mapping the utilities, underground utilities, and talk about the cost over a period of time, right? Digging is every time you map it once, you have ready maps ready with you, right?
Yes, that is one. And once you have a map prepared for you that is there with you for the lifetime, you only need to add if you are adding some new utilities to that. That's one. And secondly, this is the first time, honestly, I have encountered a discussion in which uh, mapping has been seen to be more expensive than digging. Uh, like whatever I know of, digging is always a more expensive thing, even in terms of man hours, and you add social cost to that. Unfortunately, most of the time we do not add social cost to this. Okay, for example, we dig a road and we say that okay, this contractor came, he dug the road, he finished the job in 8 hours of time. It costed me, let's say, 2,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees, right? But 50,000 commuters for the next 1 week are taking a detour. They are burning extra fuel. They are having problems with their commute. That is the social cost. We are not adding to the whole thing. But that is still, if we don't add, underground mapping in India is no more that expensive a proposition. So I really do not know where does that come from. Uh, if required, we can discuss that. Because just now it's only a statement that it was more expensive. I don't have the numbers right now. Right?
Right, right. Okay. Now let's go on to the question that I talked about, climate change. When there's enhanced precipitation, what do cities have to do? And in terms of underground utilities, how do you assess their capacity currently?
See, when we are talking of excessive rainfall, what is happening because of climate change? That sometimes you are getting rain which you generally get in a month in just 48 hours of time. Okay, so your drainage system has to be robust enough, right, to basically clear this water as soon as possible. Now, right now, we are having the problem of like completely choked stormwater drains, all right, because of various reasons, because of what garbage, putting on the sewage is overloaded. Sometime stormwater basically finds its way in the sewage lines. That is also a problem. And these lines, since they have not been maintained for a very, very long time, might be flowing at the capacity of 10%, 15%, 20%. We don't know. Unless we know, we can't do anything about it. So the only solution is basically to make sure that our utilities are working at the full capacity. Okay. Yesterday only I was listening to a particular presentation in a conference in Bhopal yesterday, and like what they did is they lined the sewer line with PVC, and because the friction coefficient in PVC is very, very low, the flowing capacity is increasing by 25 to 30%. Okay. So that means if it was able to carry X earlier, now it is able to carry X into 1.25. So you have to maintain your utilities so that they are able to carry this kind of a load efficiently and clean them, of course. Cleaning is so important. We know our sewage lines are silted up, choked. And why they get silted up? Because they are cracked. So soil is infiltrating in the sewer lines. It all ultimately it all starts from there. How well you are maintaining our assets, and we are not maintaining our assets.
Right, right. So municipalities also need to allocate resources for asset maintenance and then asset rehabilitation. And of course, the baseline, what you're saying is mapping underground utilities, right?
It starts from there. Whatever you don't know where it is, you can't maintain it, right? So it starts with mapping it. Then it starts with allocating funds for regular maintenance, and do the condition assessment, and then obviously rehabilitation. So this entire thing is interlinked. Has to be done like that.
How many municipalities, in your estimation, actually focus on keeping the water flowing? Even whether it's in the sewage lines or the drainage lines or the water pipelines, and making sure that the quality of the pipes are good.
See, I don't want to make a statement here because I'm not working in that domain exclusively. I'm a geophysicist. I do so many other things. But if you just ask me as a layman, right, I don't know of any municipality who is doing this. Okay. Now, if there is someone, I would love to hear their case study. Okay, because as far as I'm concerned, I do not see anyone doing it. Because you talk to any city, they have the same problems, right? So,
Okay. Dr. Rana, thank you for joining us. This is the beginning of a conversation. We will also be talking to various mayors, municipal commissioners, and so on to figure out how they are tackling it and what are the problems they face. We would love to hear from you along with them the next time that we do the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Found this video useful? Please subscribe to this channel for more such videos. Do like and share with as many people as you can.